Okay. Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody to our broadcast media and entertainment panel. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We had to figure some things out, but we're here now, and that's all that matters. But I'm excited today to introduce you all to Anna Kachikyan, founder of the Armenian Report, and Christian Manoukian, a writer and producer at KABC-TV. And really quickly, this event is hosted by us at the Business Club. My name is David. I'm the chairman of Business CSUN. Christian, Anna, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, David. I'll start by introducing myself. As you said, my name is Christian Manoukian. I am a writer and producer at KABC-TV, or for those of you who just turn on your TV in the evening, that's Channel 7. I've been there for about 2.5 years now. I at ABC straight out of college, and yeah, it's an amazing job. We'll get all into the technical details a little bit later, but happy to be here. Thank you so much for hosting Anna and I. We're very proud and honored to be here.
Thank you so much. Anna, could you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, guys. Thank you for having us. Christian, it's good to meet you. Um, my name is Anna Kachikyan, and I'm the creator and founder of the Armenian Report. And we are a digital news media where we provide Armenian news to the English speaking diaspora around the world. And I started my career in broadcast news at CNBC, which is business news. And then I went over to NBC News Channel for some national news coverage. And then I went to KABC, where Christian is now, where I worked on at local news. And then I transitioned over to TMZ for entertainment news because I did not want to leave Los Angeles and be away from my family, typical Armenian behavior. and then and then I started the Armenian Report a few years after leaving TMZ. So here we are.
Thank you so much for those introductions. It's great to hear from you, from both of you again. And so, Anna, I know you touched on it a little bit, but could you both tell us a little bit more, about your background, why you chose to work in your field, how you got started in your career, pretty early on from, your college days, and how the process of deciding that you wanted to be in this industry kind of came about. And so, since Anna, since you already kind of started on that train of thought, could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah. So I always wanted to work in news, but then initially where it began was I want to say in high school when I was trying to figure out what am I good at, what am I not good at, where would I thrive. I began to eliminate things, right? Well, I'm not good at math. I don't like science. I love writing. I love my English classes. I love telling stories. I love reading stories. And then from there, I was like, journalism. And then I began to really look into what is journalism. And then never in a million years did I think I would be in front of the camera. Um, so I always thought I would write. I'm going to produce news. And so until today, actually, that is my favorite part of the entire process of news gathering and working in the news industry. And but that's kind of how I narrowed it down. And then I would say the best way of how I got into it was I began interning and started working from a really young age. So I and I'm not saying you should do this, but I racked up my credit card, bills because I was still a college student, but I really wanted to intern. So I was working for free instead of for money. I mean, I still had I used to work at like Abercrombie and Fitch, 24-hour fitness, like jobs like that. But like they weren't paying for my bills or my credit card bill. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like when you're a college student in Los Angeles, it's expensive, right? Like so you're not like I wasn't experiencing those like typical college beard I was doing like the fancy Hollywood dinners when I was going to college, and I was just like credit card, intern CNBC, intern NBC, and I vividly remember my girlfriend was doing the same thing. She was a business student at CSUN, and I was in journalism, and we were sitting there like I'll never forget. Each piece of sushi was $9, and that's a lot of money, right, for a college student. And I remember thinking, we were like, "What are we doing?" And she's like, "We're gonna graduate. We're going to get good jobs, and we're going to pay off these credit cards." And we both did. She went to NBC Universal. She worked in, in her business. Like, I can't remember what she specifically was doing, but she had a great job. And then I had a decent job too. And we paid off our credit cards, and we were like, we got lucky. But that's kind of how I did it. And it's not to say that it was right, but it worked because I knew that I was going to work my butt off and pay those credit cards off and never allow for my credit score to drop below like 800. And I did it. Christian,
thank you so much for that.
This is the right audience to tell this story to, by the way.
Yeah, thankfully I didn't have to max out any credit cards to get where I am, but that's definitely one way to do it. But similarly to Anna, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do something related to journalism or writing. There was a joke when I was in middle school. I used to walk up to people and act like I was interviewing them. You know, I just like hold up my hand as if it was a microphone. And that kind of became a running joke through middle school and into high school. But it kind of manifested itself into reality because when I was in high school, similarly to Anna, I wasn't a math or science guy, but I loved reading, writing, English classes, history. I just knew that I wanted to do something where I could always be learning. I'm a big advocate for always be learning. You know, I love to read, and journalism just spoke to me. It was something that appealed to me as, you know, who I was as a person, as a curious person, as a learner. And I found out in college that this is where I want to be for the rest of my life, God willing. And so I kind of delved further down that path. I took jobs that would hone the skills that I felt I would need in journalism. For example, I worked as a photographer for a long time. I worked as a tour guide at my alma mater, Cal Poly Pomona. So I was talking to groups every day. I became very comfortable talking to groups of people and just very comfortable interacting with others, which I think is it's an important skill in life, but especially in journalism, which is a very forward-facing industry. And I worked for our campus newspaper, so I got a lot of writing and video experience. Just I racked up experience that I knew would help me down the line. And sure enough, when I got my first job at KABC, which was working as a news assistant, it was a job, not an internship, but it was very similar to an internship. You know, one of the reasons I got that job was because I was very active in my on-campus, you know, journalism and media clubs and organizations. And so I worked my way up from there. I worked my butt off. I never said no to taking on extra work. I welcomed the extra responsibility, and it's paid off big time.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that. And I think it's really helpful. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it.
I want to add, Christian basically said the magic word here, which is curiosity. If you think you are a very curious person, you are very likely will succeed in this industry because you have to be curious. So many of my like closest friends, I say something like, "Who cares?" I'm just like, "Oh, you're not curious? No, I don't care. I don't care." Like, I'm just like, I want to know,
Right.
you know? So you have to be a very curious person. If you do not find yourself, and it's not a thing of being nosy at all. It's just genuine curiosity. Are you curious about things you don't know? You have no access about, like nothing. You didn't even know about that. It will not affect you. You don't know these people. It has nothing to do with you. It will never impact you, will never hurt you, but you still want to know about it. That's curiosity. You have to explore if you are a curious person.
Right. And yeah, and so I think that's a really helpful piece of advice, especially since, you know, most of our audience is comprised of college students who are probably looking to, enter a similar field. So, hearing about both of your backgrounds and the things that you two were able to do to sort of prepare, not only prepare for a role, but, be proactive and, kind of understanding the industry and applying your passion to something, practical, is very inspiring, and I think it's very helpful. But given that, you are both in the industry now, and you both are pretty seasoned, pretty experienced, how would you say the industry has changed over the years since you first started until now? And Christian, you can go ahead and start if you'd like.
Sure. Well, I haven't been in the media industry for too long, but that being said, there's still been quite a bit of change in my brief time working so far. I can say that social media has taken a much bigger role in how we distribute and get news out to the world. So if you aren't on social media, or you're not, interacting with social media, that might be something you want to think about, because social media is becoming the center of the news world, but not in the way you might think. So even just in the past 2.5, nearly 3 years that I've been with KABC, another thing that we've started to emphasize more of is streaming, right? You've got your Netflix and Disney Plus and all these streaming services, but news organizations want in on that too. They want a slice of your attention. They want to bring you in on their side, and they want you to be more well-informed. That's a key goal of ours, is to make the public more informed. And with TV news, how many college students are realistically watching TV news, are turning on the TVs at night? Likely not many. So as news organizations, we want to reach out to younger demographics in a different way, in a way that appeals to them. And two of those ways are streaming and social media. And so we've emphasized that a lot just over the time that I've been working. And I think that's going to grow exponentially in the coming years.
Yeah, I agree with Christian. Social media has been a huge game changer in the industry, but I want to take it a little more further back. For me, I started at a time when news was digitizing their content. What does that mean? Okay. So before, it was on tapes, right? So everything was a tape. So if you needed, let's say, a piece of video from Kim Kardashian's first wedding, okay, you would have to go pull the date from that tape, go to the tape library, like run. I don't know, what are you guys using the tape library for now, Christian?
The tapes are still there.
They're still there. Okay. So we used to run to the tape library, right, with the date, like you write on a Post-it note, run there, pick up the tape, cue it to that part, and then you would give it to the editor, and then the editor would put it in and get that piece of video of Kim Kardashian walking down the aisle from her first wedding. Okay. So I started at KABC right when KABC began to digitize their media. So what's happening to broadcast media is it's significantly changing so fast, right? So this was at a like I started on the cusp right there, where, okay, we're done with like tapes. We got to put everything on like a system. And then that way we just log all the piece of video, and then you just search for it, and then it comes up. So it was a really interesting time, because KABC started purchase the software, and they were gonna, what are we gonna use for this? And then when I went over to TMZ, there were no tapes, and I built the digital media library along with my coworker. So that was a huge experience and a very valuable asset to my skill set and my career, and everything that I apply for now is I learned. But having an organized, digitalized content that we have access to, that for you guys are just, you're like, well, what do you mean tapes, right? So it was an interesting time. And then with Christian, you have social media that has changed the game, right? And so TMZ was like the digitizing step. The Armenian Report is now the social media. The Armenian Report doesn't have a website yet. because frankly, I would much rather invest my time and the company's money into social media, because that's where my audience is getting their content. And that's what Christian was saying, that initially begin, engaging and growing your brand on social media before moving on. You have to have a website. You have to, and that is on our like immediate to-do list. So never depend on social media, because you don't own, Mark Zuckerberg owns your content. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? You can use it as a tool to brand yourself, but to have your own content, you have to have your own website. And so learn from my mistakes. Make sure you have your website right away.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting to hear about, how, Anna, like you mentioned, it's becoming digitized, and it's changing at such a accelerated pace, and it's also, really interesting to hear about how social media is playing a part in that. But what I wanted to ask about is fundamentally, when I know that both of you are, produce content for, your outlets, and so I think one of the things that would be cool to know is what your creative process is like. So putting aside, kind of the technicals, how do you, how you produce a segment, or how a story goes from being written to being produced. How does your sort of creative process work when you're looking out for certain things to touch on or to report on? How do you figure out what information is going to be valuable and something that your audience is going to want to hear? And Anna, if you'd like, you could go ahead and start with that one.
Yeah, I'll start. So in a traditional news media like KABC, for example, we would have a meeting, right? A morning meeting where producers discuss the news of the day, and then we discuss, does that pertain to our audience or not, right? So for instance, if you work in Los Angeles, if there's news about Armenians, you're likely going to pick up that story because there's a very large Armenian population, right, in Los Angeles, versus if you are in another state, another town where it's like no one's ever heard of Armenians and there's a story related. So you see what I'm saying? So like there's a news meeting that happens where we discuss these stories. Now with the Armenian Report, it's a little different because it's not a traditional news process, because our reporters are not they're scattered, right? So we have writer in, let's say, Moscow, we have people in Canada, we have people, majority of the people are in Armenia. So everything is done remotely. So we have our morning meeting in the morning where we get, I get a list of all the stories that happen in Armenia. And then we also look at all the other news sources, right? Maybe we missed something. And then we decide on the stories we're going to do. And I think the process of deciding what stories you're going to cover for that day is the hardest part. The hardest part, because people right now are very sensitive and critical to news, right, Christian?
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful, and that process can take some time. And sometimes, frankly, since I'm the executive producer, I'm I don't want to do it. I don't even want to deal with it, to be honest with you guys. There is no right way of telling this story. It's a sad story. People are done with sad stories. They're just is there even a point to this? Even though it's news and we should do it. So sometimes I have the huevos to do it. Sometimes it's I don't want to deal with it, right? So so deciding on the story can be a little hard because of the nature of the time we're living through with news. And being the Armenian Report, you have to be very careful. Words matter, and there are certain words you can say, you cannot say. So for instance, most recently, I didn't know, but I learned that it's not right to, when you're writing a suicide story, to write committed suicide. It's death by suicide, or dies by suicide. So there's certain ways of wording certain very sensitive stories that you have to be very careful, but you learn as you go, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to make mistakes, and that's, had I not made that mistake, had I not done that story, I wouldn't have learned that, right? So but deciding on stories is a very tough part of the morning. Yeah, but you have to have a morning meeting. You just have to, and I'm pretty certain KBC still does that. Your turn, Christian.
Yeah, we do still do morning meetings. They're now over Zoom. We used to do them in person. It's just called the morning editorial meeting. And, unlike the Armenian Report, which is a very streamlined operation and they're able to generate content quickly and get it out to their audience, there's a lot more layers at KBC. There's a bit of a bureaucracy, red tape that you have to go through. And it's because our audience is that, millions of people in LA County. And as Anna said, words do matter. And if you are going to mess up a story, or if you're going to spell someone's name wrong, if you're going to, misquote somebody, these are all huge things that happen often. The story or the content that you're producing has to pass through different gatekeepers, if you will. So we've got writers, that's myself. We've got producers, which I also produce. We've got executive producers who kind of oversee the entire news operation. We've got our news director, who is more of the, they control more of the overarching narratives that we follow. But as Anna said, a morning meeting is critical. We'll discuss what stories are relevant to our audience, what isn't. Obviously, as you might assume, certain stories get precedence, no matter what. National politics, what the president is saying or doing on a given day, of course, that's gonna be very important. But also, we're based here in LA. We've got an incredibly diverse population who all have different issues that are afflicting them, and they all have different issues that they care about. Armenians are just one slice in this beautiful city that we call LA. We've got a lot of issues that we'd like covered, and I know there was protests when the war in Artsakh was happening because of how certain news outlets were covering the conflict or a lack of coverage. And that's something that we take seriously and we wanted to address. And so we had a meeting about that. How can we better cover this conflict? Because it matters to the people in our region. Now, if you live in Dallas, Texas or something, that's not going to matter to you. We're probably not going to be covering the conflict in Armenia as much because maybe there's not a large Armenian population. People are like, where is Armenia? Right? Like they don't even know where Armenia is located. It's just an example. But yeah, with a big news organization, there's a lot of different levels that a piece of content will go through before it's given the thumbs up, the okay to make it on air. And once it makes it on air, it people see it. And if something is wrong, and once or twice it's happened where I've done something wrong that's made it on air. And they crack down on that. They're pretty strict. And because our goal is to provide accurate and fact-based news. There's a lot of, not to go on a tangent, but there's been a lot of talk about fake news and what role the news media plays. Are we being too overbearing on shaping the narrative of the news? And with outlets like ABC, NBC, CBS, we've got a very short amount of time to tell you a story. It could be a very complex story, but we get maybe 25 or 30 seconds to explain the story to you. So we don't have time to add in our own opinion to editorialize. Whereas outlets like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, those tend to be more opinion-based. They have their facts, but then they bring in people to add their own opinions. And that's where you kind of get off the rails. So for us, as we're purely delivering the facts, we need to make sure everything is correct, everything is accurate, everything is phrased well before that makes it to air. So it's a long process, but it happens every day, so there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And so, now that, we kind of have an understanding of how that process works and, actually selecting and going through that process of deciding what's actually going to make it, on air. what other teams do you guys work with in terms of actually getting that that segment or that story produced and put out to, you know, to your audience? And you know, what's that secondary sort of the process like, where, you know, the idea has been solidified and you know what you're doing for the story, but you know, what's the kind of next step to getting that actually put out there, you know, for your audience? And we can start with Christian on that one.
Sure. Well, I'll give you this example. After this panel is done, I'm going to go into work from 6:30 to 11:30 to write for our 11 p.m. show. On that show, it's myself and one other writer. So we got two writers for the show. We've got a producer who puts the show together, chooses what stories we cover and in what order. And then we've got an executive producer who, as I said, is going to read through all those stories that I and the other writer script, make sure there's no spelling errors, make sure everything is accurate. And then we've got a team of editors who also help us in cutting our video and making sure everything is polished and ready to go on air. So on a given day, there's between 5 and 15 people working on a show. It's a big operation, like I mentioned, but everybody has a role. And my role tonight and my role normally is to write the stories, make sure they're accurate, make sure all the relevant facts are included. And like I said, when I'm given this much time for a complex story, your writing skills really come to the forefront. You have to be able to relay complex details in a very simple to understand way. It's difficult, but that's kind of the challenge that I enjoy. So myself and a couple other people are putting this content out every day. It might be a smaller operation than people think. They might think there's like 100 people working on a show, and that's just not the case. Or maybe people are like, wow, 5 people for a half-hour show. That's more than I thought. So, but that's an example for myself. Anna?
Christian, question for you.
Yeah.
For instance, for tonight from 6 to 11 for the 11 o'clock news, for 2 writers, how many stories are you each writing?
Probably between 5 or 6 stories each. Yeah. So yeah. That's typical.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So what Christian said, this is kind of what I did, right, for over 15 years. So everyone is assigned to their role. This is, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're an editor, everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And then as everyone does what they're supposed to do, the show comes together, voila, right? So with Armenian Report, I'm wearing all the hats. And so it's I don't recommend it. You can drive yourself crazy at times. So for instance, Christian said he, in one news broadcast, he'll write 5 to 6 stories, and then another writer will write 5 to 6 stories. We like to, on a typical day, like to do anywhere from 6 to 8 stories, right? And I write those stories. And so we have our reporters, wherever they're pitching from, pitch it, and then they'll send it, and then I typically will rewrite a story, because how I'm writing for an American audience. Yes, sure, majority of our readers are Armenian, but I am essentially, they're Armenian Americans, so you're reading as an American, and so it needs to be rewritten for an American audience, if that makes sense. So even though so I don't have a writer that's like Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like these are Armenian journalism college students who are still in school, right, studying and learning, and English is like their 3rd, 4th language. So I will have to go in and rewrite everything. And the process for us is, yes, we have our morning meeting. Yes, I pick these are the stories we're going to do. And then they send me those stories. And then along with that story, what art are we going to use, right? What's our photo? What's our video? Is there a video that goes with it? Because if there's video with it, I'd rather use the video than a photo. So then, there's a photo. Sometimes there is no photo. God forbid, let's say it's a suicide story. You don't have a photo. So you need to create art. So then we have our creative, there's two young guys in the capital of Armenia who work for the Armenian Report. They create our creative stuff. So we'll ask them to come up with some sort of like art that we can post for the story. We have to provide them with the headline and we have to provide them with the art. If they're not making the art, then it's here's the video, here's the headline, and then they create the art for us. That goes on Instagram, that goes on Facebook. So each platform has its own like sizing or whatever, right? Sorry, so you said the process. So that's the process. And then as far as proofreading, I wish I had an executive producer to proofread some of my stuff, but then like I make mistakes all the time, especially with like if I've been writing for the past I don't know couple of hours with no like breaks, then I do tend to make mistakes, and it drives me insane because that is like a journalist nightmare, by the way. Like misspelling someone's name, you're just like, yeah, whatever, no, unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's like, it's bad. It's you. And that's the difference between an intern who starts as an intern and goes in and you see your executive producer like throw like this big like shit fit about, and you're like, that's what he's upset about? Get over it. You know what I mean? You will get blocked if you react that way. Like you have to kind of I don't know how to say this nicely, but like, follow the herd. Like if a writer is like, oh my God, I misspelled their name, like you should be like, oh my God, like, oh my God, just get in on the ride with them, don't be like, whatever, it was just a period instead of a comma, like get over you guys, like this is stupid. Like on Instagram, we misspell shit all the time. No, we don't do that. Journalists do not do that. Like you have to be very careful. And then there's the other side where sometimes, we'll post a story and then I'll see the mistake later, right, Christian? So it's like, it's already aired. Like you can't go back and fix it, right? And I always tell myself, like, people forget so fast, but then at the same time, your boss isn't going to forget because your boss is going to be afraid you're going to make that dumb mistake again. And if you keep making that dumb mistake, you're not going to have a job. And that's just the nature of the business. It is true.
Yeah,
it's
very
like
true.
this. You're out next. So you have to be very careful. Details matter in this industry.
Right. No, that's very interesting. And it's good to know as well. So for anybody who's watching right now, who's about to, get into an internship or anything like that, detail oriented, be really detail oriented as, as they said. But yeah, I kind of want to transition now into, kind of a really, it's really the elephant in the room, and it's been a huge deal and affected everyone. But I think one thing that would be helpful to know is how COVID and the whole pandemic kind of affected your industry and how things are done. Whether that be from the production standpoint, and whether that be from the way that the sorts of stories and things that you are responsible for putting out there have changed, anything of the nature, just kind of in a very general sense, how has COVID affected the industry? And we can start with Anna for that one.
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting question because I was freaking out when it happened. Like I was freaking out so much so that I had a whole like a Entrepreneur magazine did like a segment like this for their like live podcast where we had a whole topic about me as a media owner freaking out about how what's the future, what's going to happen, how are we going to get our ad dollars, like what are we supposed to do, like this is and honestly our reader count, like our viewers have skyrocketed because everyone's on their phone. Everyone is consuming information. Even the people who weren't consuming information on Instagram, Facebook, or anywhere, they're spending way more time now on their gadgets. Everything has gone digital. So our industry has, I don't want to say benefited, but it hasn't been affected. If anything, there's far more readers that we're reaching now because of COVID than before. And it's not like the COVID because like people are sick, God forbid. I'm saying because we've gone digital so fast that there wasn't this like gradual transition. It was just like everyone's on their phones. Everyone is like, reading and spending so much more time on their digital. So yeah.
Yeah, to echo what Anna said, I really do think we have benefited as an industry. That's kind of a sad thing to say because COVID has not been good for anybody. That's inarguable. But the news industry has benefited because so many more people are just plugged in now, whether it's to stay up to date on what tier is LA County in, when are we getting out of the COVID restrictions, or whether it's just because they've got a lot more time. Things have been canceled. They're not going out. A lot of people are tuning in to our shows. LA is the number 2 news market in the country. New York is number 1, but our station is now the number 1 station in the country in terms of viewership and in terms of engagement. Our digital team has been ranked number 1 in the country for several months straight now. Yeah, it's really good.
Congratulations.
And that's just like you said, Anna, with the Armenian Report and with readers skyrocketing for you. It's the same for us at KABC. We've seen a lot more people tuning in. People are definitely more engaged now, which I view as a good thing. I think people need to be much more engaged with the news, to question what we are putting out, to make sure it's accurate, keep us accountable, if you will. And so in a sense, the pandemic has done that because now a lot of people are paying attention to what we're putting out and making sure it's fair and accurate. So I see it as a good thing.
Yeah, accountability has definitely increased, which is great because I always say this: I don't want dumb readers. I want smart readers.
Right.
I don't want people who read the Armenian Report to ask me to explain it to them. I want people who read and understand it. So it's okay. Sometimes I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. So I like the readers who hold you accountable. I like the readers who will call me out on a typo. I'm like, somebody read the story, so I get excited because that means you were actually paying attention when you were reading. So I love when people hold me accountable. I love when people hold anyone accountable. I think accountability creates a very healthy, like it's almost like this competition, right? Like a healthy competition. So it's good. I like it. I like that. And I encourage everyone to hold news media outlets accountable as well. And I do it too. And I like it when it's done to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear because like both of you mentioned, it's rare for an industry to be or to have gained something or to have gained some or to have seen some benefit from what's been going on, but it definitely does make a lot of sense, especially with Anna, like you were mentioning, the whole digitizing of of the industry, and so yeah, it's a very interesting perspective, and I think that Christian touched on this a little bit earlier on, but I know that there's a lot of the news. There isn't as much efficacy in the news nowadays among people, and there's a little bit of a stigma towards the credibility and the accountability of news outlets. But what are some common misconceptions that you guys hear often about the industry, and we can start with Christian on this one.
Well, I touched on it earlier. A lot of people think we're lying and we're not. And I want to be very clear for everyone who's watching. There's a difference between news outlets like ABC, CBS, NBC, the channel 2, 4, and 7, 5, and 11. The main channels that people used to have on their TV in the 50s and 60s. we are news organizations dedicated to going through a lot of news with the viewer. We have 1 hour or half an hour to get through all the different news stories of the day. Like I said, we spend 25, 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds if it's a big story, covering a certain angle, and that's it. So we don't have time to editorialize or kind of inject our opinions into a script. That requires a lot of time, and we don't try to sensationalize things. We try to keep things as real as it gets. Just deliver the facts, make it interesting. Of course, you want to try to find the interesting hook in each story, but we want to get in and get out while being fair and accurate. Stations like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, I'm going to say this again. Yes, they deliver news. However, there's always opinion slid in there, and people may not have the news awareness to see that. Some people like that. They like to see two people, in a double box arguing about this candidate or that topic. There's something in us that's attracted to the train wreck in slow motion. I don't know what it is.
No, people like to be told how to think, Christian. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's easier.
Exactly. And that is what those stations specialize in. You tune in and you've got a guy who's not just delivering the news, but telling you what to think about the news, which can be dangerous. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it can be dangerous. So I think a lot of people think the news isn't fair and accurate, but it depends how you define news. That's what I would say.
Sorry, guys. Do you hear the trash truck over here? Okay, good. It's so loud. So the one of the, for me, the biggest misconception that people have of news outlets is that it was done intentionally, that they're doing this intentionally. And I think that what I would love for people to understand is, like Christian said, Christian has a very short amount of time to write that story. And he has a very short amount of time to deliver that story. So it's not done intentionally to mislead. It's just that there isn't enough time in a news program, right? If it's a 30-minute news broadcast, if it's a 1 hour, so it's not done intentionally to mislead. I think that happened a lot during the war in Artsakh, during September and October, and early November, where there was an incident with CBS local news where, do you guys remember when Armenians were protesting outside of CBS? And when I spoke with the news director, it was just like, it wasn't done intentionally. The writer simply does not have a history lesson on Armenia and Azerbaijan. It's pure ignorance. So the person who's writing the story, no clue about the history of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Like literally, they just, maybe, I don't know, Christian, what do you have, like 5 minutes to Google Wikipedia this information, right?
Right. I mean, it depends on
to understand
yeah.
a complicated historical history between two countries, and just like doesn't know, quickly writes a story, whatever's on Wikipedia, boom, done. Yeah. So it's, I don't think the intent is malicious. I think it's just, and perhaps people are gonna be like, we don't want it. We want an in-depth news history lesson. Well, guess what? No one's watching that, because they would much rather watch two heads, right, fighting. So no one's gonna watch that either. Here, that's there isn't an industry for that. No one's gonna pay for ad dollars for that. So, people complain, but it's like no one's gonna watch the in-depth news. So what do we do here? I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for clearing that up. I personally didn't know that, and wasn't able to kind of gauge the difference between, solely reporting and kind of, pulling from just the facts, as opposed to, integrating some components of the demographics opinion and the channel's opinion and things like that. So,
well,
yeah.
Well, David, think about it, right? So you have CNN 24/7, they're running news, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas Christian, the 11 o'clock news is 1 hour or 30 minutes, Christian?
Just a half hour.
It's a half hour. It's half hour. That's all he has, right? So they only have time for a half hour news. Whereas CNN has a whole day. If you're a news producer for CNN, it's like all day. So it's like, what are you going to do? Okay, you give the news, and then what? And then what? And then there has to be some content that you all day have to create. So you got to bring in these like talking heads all day long.
Yeah, there never used to be 24-hour news cycle. They call it the 24-hour news cycle. Guys, there is not enough news to fill 24 hours straight. They're talking about the same issues over and over again. And 1 hour they bring in this guy, the next hour they bring in that girl. I challenge whoever's watching, go watch any, I'd like you to watch our newscast at 11, but go watch any newscast on one of these main channels. Watch how we do it. It's in, it's out, it's very quick. You'll notice there's no opinions shared. Then go turn your channel to one of these major cable news outlets. Watch what they do. I just challenge you to watch it. See if you can pick out the differences between the two. And it'll be surprising when you've heard this information and now you apply it and go watch it yourself. You'll see that not every outlet is really delivering news. And that's what's important to remember. So thank you for asking this question. It's a very important thing that often goes overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense. And so one last kind of question that I had just before we move into some audience questions, like we mentioned, we are a club that is based on, the foundation of our membership and, our demographic, and the people who are watching this right now are likely, college students who are pretty interested in, breaking into this industry. And my question is, what piece of advice do you have for somebody who is looking to get their foot in the door? And what is kind of something that you wish you knew kind of getting into this industry that you think would be helpful for the people watching this and listening to it? And we can start with Anna on this one.
I would say start early. Start very, very early. And when I say early, I mean if you have a slight curiosity for this industry, get an internship, get a job, do anything. Just being in that atmosphere, you'll get a sense, because it can become very intense. Christian, very intense, right? The newsroom.
Very.
Yeah. So it can become very intense. And if you come into that intense environment and you realize the energy isn't for you, you're out. Right? So now you know. And when I say you're out, I don't mean like you're not good enough. You're like, you decide that this is not the environment for you. It can get very intense. Okay. Some call it toxic. I don't think it's toxic. I like that kind of vibe, right? Like I like that craziness. I thrive in that kind of environment. But some people find it toxic and some people can't handle it. I have a lot of people who apply a job for the Armenian Report, and like really early on, they will quit because they're like, I can't do this. It's a lot of negative, sad news. And even in local news, right? Local news, grandpa got ran over by a car. A little kid was like died. Earthquake, rain, it's like fire. Like it's always just this sad news. And where do you find the joy in that, right? And it's the same, like if you want to become a nurse, how do you find the joy in death? So it's hard, and you have to be able to find that excitement in that environment. And so I urge you, get an internship, and whatever you need to do. Actually, interns get paid now. What am I talking about? I keep saying internship because okay, hold on. Interns get paid now. When I was interning, interns did not get paid. Okay, now interns get paid. Okay, so yes, you might get minimum wage, but get an internship, get your foot in the door, and start. And you're probably wondering, how do I get an internship in like media? KBC has a program, right? They have a whole program for interns. So if you can get pulled through this interview, you can get an internship. And so if you get an interview, and if I can help you, or if Christian can help you prepare for this interview, happy to do so. But again, it's a certain personality. You just have to, like, I don't know, as somebody who's working in this industry, like, when I interview someone, I already know, I'm like, this person's gonna be great. Or I'm just like, nope, not the right kind of energy. They're not gonna be with it, and they're just not gonna be happy. They're not going to be happy. So even the person interviewing you will be able to tell if you're in for this or you're not. And sometimes you just prove them wrong or whatever it is, but do it now. Do it now. Find out if this is your vibe.
I have two pieces of advice that I want to share. And I share it with anybody who asks me. I get a lot of college students ask me this. I think it's very applicable to anybody. Number one is be persistent. Don't underestimate the value and don't underestimate the power of persistence. For example, I only got my initial job at KABC because I was persistent. I reached out to a connection that I had 5 times via email. Each time I was rebuffed, until the 5th time, finally, she responded to my email. And she didn't even respond to what I had said in the email. So I sent her a 6th email, again, attaching my resume, saying, looking for a job, can you forward my resume? And finally, the 6th email, guys, 6 times I was rejected. 5 times I was rejected, basically. The 6th time was the charm. And she forwarded on my resume to the woman who later became my boss. So all that to say is okay to be rejected. Just keep going after it. Obviously know your limits. Don't stalk a person, but also don't give up at the first sign. If they don't respond to your email or your call, don't say, oh, well, I guess that's job's not meant for me. If you want it, go after it and pursue it. And if after all that is said and done, they're still not interested in you, it's not a good fit, then you have to be okay with that and move on. But don't underestimate the power of persistence. 1. 2, tying into that, build your base of connections. I cannot stress how important connections are in every industry, but especially in the media industry, which is a smaller industry than you'd think. Look at Anna and I. We had never met each other, but we had worked at the same company. We knew many of the same people. What are the odds of that? Connections are everything. In a world that's primarily digital now, where I can go on my computer and apply for a job in Germany or in Brazil and be one of the applicants along with the Brazilian or the German applicants, the world has opened up, and it's no longer enough to just send in your resume and cover letter and hope that, hey, I hope they pick me. I'm a good guy. I've got good experience. That's not enough anymore, in my opinion. If you can connect with people personally, find their email, reach out to them on social media, whatever works for you. But if you can make that connection, meet them for coffee or over Zoom, whatever you feel most comfortable with, that can be absolutely so valuable when it comes to potentially getting a job or you helping them. Maybe they have a task or a job that they thought of you for. That's how the world works. Say, and I have a job that you would be perfect for. She didn't ask for it, but suddenly there's an extra payday for her, let's say, just as an example. So connections are very, very important. And I know people are on LinkedIn and et cetera, but go beyond LinkedIn. Ask to meet for a coffee. Ask for a phone call. The worst they can say is no. That's the worst they can say. You're not going to get punished. It's just a simple no, and you move on to the next person.
Yeah, I second that, Christian. I think besides LinkedIn, a tool that has been great is Clubhouse. Clubhouse has been a wonderful networking place during COVID. And it, so like, for instance, with LinkedIn, you're messaging them, but with Clubhouse, you have the potential to meet with them via voice, which is one step closer to like making it's a little more of an intimate connection you're making with a person, right? And it's very genuine because your intention was just to like introduce yourself, talk about it, talk about what you like to do, who you are, what you're interested in, what you're looking for, what your interests are. And then someone is like listening in, they're like, wait a minute. Like, for instance, me, if I'm in a Clubhouse room and I'm, let's say, looking for a graphic designer, and someone is like, oh, I'm still in college, I'm looking for, like, freelance graphic design work. Hi, email me, you know? So it goes back to what you said with persistence. It's like, imagine if you're constantly on Clubhouse talking about who you are and what you're looking for, what you want to do. It's like playing darts. The more you throw, you're gonna get it.
Eventually, one's gonna stick.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that. That's really helpful, and I think that everybody who's listening can benefit from those pieces of advice. So thank you both for that. I'm gonna pass it over to our president, Lily, who's gonna be taking some questions from the audience. But again, thank you both so much. It's been super insightful, and it's been a pleasure, to hear from both of you. So I'm gonna pass it off to Lily now.
Thank you, David. Much success to you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Lily.
I'm Lily. I'm the current president of Business CSUN. I'm going to be asking the audience questions. If I don't ask your question, I'm sorry. You all had very great questions. It was very hard to pick which ones to ask. But kind of going off, ironically, how Anna mentioned in the last question about internships, our first question was, how was the process of getting your first internship/job? And what skills are you expected to have prior to the training of the job? So Anna, you can go first with that since you kind of touched on that.
I think, God, I haven't gotten an internship in so long. I think with internship, you kind of have to be in school for something like that, right? So for instance, like if you're in medical school, you're not going to apply for a job for journalism. Like there has to be some kind of connection to media or something you're studying, which makes sense why we would invest our time into, right? So if when I'm hiring an intern, when I'm interviewing an intern, my hope is that this intern grows with me. So if you are wanting to become a doctor and I bring you on the Armenian Report to intern for the Armenian Report, it's a waste of my time. So one, right, Christian? Let's make yourself be an asset. So don't waste the time of the organization. That's important. So how are you not going to waste their time? Well, make a list of all the things that you can provide the Armenian Report, KABC, wherever you're applying to. I'm available. Yes, I'm in school, but I'm available on these, like all 5 days from this time to that time. I can work weekends. Do you want me to work the weekends? I can work with your weekend crew. Do you need me to travel? I can travel. Do you need me to get lunch? I love eating. I can get you food. Like whatever you need. Whatever you need a car. I have a car. I can take you anywhere. I can do whatever you want me to do. So making a list of all the things that you can do, right? To help, to be an asset. And the reason why I'm mentioning something as simple as like having a car, buying lunch, is because I don't want you to like limit yourself. Like I don't want you to be like, well, I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to do like graphic design. I don't know how to do, like, that's okay. Like expand, like your list you can do so many things. You're able-bodied. You can do a lot of things. Like expand how you can be an asset to this organization. And then the other way is, of course, like Christian said, making your connections. The person who's asking this question of how do you get an internship is one step ahead because they're thinking about it. The fact that they're thinking about it, they're already subconsciously beginning to strategize in taking that step. And you don't say no. Right. So for instance, CNBC asked me to return for a second round of internships. And I remember at one point I was like, should I go get another internship or should I just stay here? It's like, but at the time I couldn't say no. Everything was a yes. So I did 2 internships with them. Whereas like, maybe I could have done a different internship somewhere else or whatever, but because I did 2 internships with them, they hired me. So now I can put on my resume that I worked there because they paid me. They hired me to work there afterwards. Did I answer the question? So, but as far as like details of how you, like where you go, like I know for sure KABC has a internship program. I just don't know where you go to apply for that. And we have just the man for that here. Take it away, Christian. Back
you
to
can
you.
go on our website. Thank you. If you're interested in applying for an internship with us, we've got sports internships, entertainment internships, digital internships, news internships. So a lot of different paths you can go down. Just quickly kind of adding my own 2 cents onto this question. Different internships will require different things of you, and it depends on the organization. If you were to intern for an organization like the Armenian Report, Anna's the founder, but you're probably going to be working closely with her and shouldering a bigger responsibility than you would as an intern at KABC, because like I said, there's just more layers. At KABC, you're probably going to be getting lunches or coffee and helping pull video for reporters. It's not going to be as consequential of work. Doesn't mean it's not important. It's still a foot in the door, regardless of where you are. But that's something to keep in mind is read through the job, their internship description carefully. They will usually tell you what they're looking for in a candidate and what your responsibilities are. And you'll be able to judge off of that if that's an opportunity that's going to benefit you, if you feel that you can bring value to that company, and always be learning. Always try to, self-improvement is big. If you feel that there's a new skill, a new platform that you can familiarize yourself with that may be applicable in the future, do it. Like Clubhouse is the latest. I'm not really very familiar with Clubhouse yet, and that's something that's on my to-do list to get a little bit more familiar with. Anna and Lily, I know you both are very familiar with Clubhouse, or like, recently it was TikTok, and now we use TikTok to publish news and do interesting things with that. That's another thing that I'm not too familiar with, but it's also on my to-do list. So if you, as someone who's seeking out work, depends on the job, of course, you're not going to get familiar with TikTok if you're going to be working for a political newspaper or something, because that's just not what they do. But tailor your skill set and work on improving your skill set for the jobs that you're interested in. If you want to come work at ABC, make sure that you're good in video editing. Make sure that you're a strong writer. It's just, tailor it to wherever you want to be.
Awesome. Thank you both for the very insightful information. Makes me kind of want to join the news industry, even though I'm not a very good writer. But our next question is for Anna. They said, since your work is directed to the specific Armenia diaspora community, what is the importance of having a media source for that specific community, and how does it help their voices be heard compared to traditional media sources like ABC, for example?
Yeah, it's a very niche market, and it's very unique because you're speaking to a very small group of people who are extremely engaged, and you're also providing them with stories from something that they don't have, let's say, access to, right? So for instance, Christian is writing about a story about some accident that happened here in LA. Likely you're going to have a cousin who lives down the street from there who like witnessed it or something and can like attest to it, right? Whereas when you're providing stories from Armenia to the diaspora, they're thousands of miles away and the culture is very different. So not only do you have to tell the news, Christian, this is interesting for you, but you also have to explain the culture. Otherwise, people are going to be, so let's say it might be like a positive thing, but for us, it's like, what? So you have to somehow explain, this is okay over there. This is their norm, or this is in their culture. So it's a really it's so fascinating. It's so different from anything I've ever done before, that I'm challenged every single day. But that has been, what was the question again? Did I answer the question?
Kind of. Like the importance of having a news source for a specific diaspora.
The importance, yeah. I mean, listen, it's very important for obvious reasons, which is there aren't that many English news outlets, right, providing news in English about Armenia, right? And so, yes, we might have, I don't know, 10, 15, 30, right? But that's not enough on google.com. You see what I'm saying? So we need more to amplify our voices. So the Armenian Report is just a little droplet in this big giant pool that is Google, right? We need more. We need more. How can we get more? We need more Armenians to create content for Google. It's really scary because the other day I Googled Lake Sevan. And when you Google Lake, by the way, Lake Sevan is, the largest body of water in the South Caucasus. It's a beautiful lake. It's in Armenian, it always has been in Armenia. And then there was this like Lake Gajo or some shit like that. And I'm like, what? What? Oh, the Azeris are now writing articles about how it's not Lake Sevan, it's Lake something else, and it's in Azerbaijan. It belongs to Azerbaijan. And I was like, no. So the importance of the Armenian Report is now it's in the back of my mind, because I'm like, I need to do a story on Lake Sevan and put content out on Google so that we can move it up on Google. So because it's Lake Sevan, this is Armenian. So this is my everyday frustration, guys. You see what I'm saying, Christian? Like So the importance of the Armenian Report is creating constant content, because we live in a digital world and we need to create content constantly to amplify the Armenian voice.
That's crazy. This question is for Christian, kind of still staying on the topic of Armenia. They asked, were you able to write about Armenia during the Artsakh War? And if not, did you feel that they might have considered that fact that you are Armenian and it would have been biased for you to write on a story about that?
Yes, I did cover the war in Artsakh. We covered it fairly extensively, primarily because I was the main Armenian voice within KABC pushing our leadership for more coverage. Nobody knows what's going on in Armenia. It's a tiny country, didn't generate a lot of media attention at first, and basically through sheer willpower from a lot of our community, they pushed local media to cover this story in more depth. And I did my part. We did run stories. We did go to protests. We went to marches, and they did have me write a lot of these stories because I was Armenian. I don't think that it ever went through anyone's mind that, oh, because he's Armenian, he might be biased. Because again, the news platform that we're right. I mean, I was the only person that understood the history of the conflict and that could write it accurately. I didn't write every story, of course. I don't work there 24/7. There were other people that wrote stories that covered Armenia. And they got the general details correct. But like Anna said earlier in the panel, it's like you're getting a history lesson on such a long-standing conflict. Maybe you have an hour of research, you watch a couple videos, read some Wikipedia or some articles, and that's it. And what you write can massively influence policy. It can influence how people think about an issue. So giving it to the one Armenian person in the building, I think, was their way of hoping that all the details would be fleshed out accurately in the reporting. And I felt that ABC did a good job of that. I'm proud to have been that person that they turned to, and I'm proud to have contributed my little piece to making sure the conflict was reported on fairly and accurately.
Good job. And this is so important to have diversity in organizations such as this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being the voice for Armenians at ABC.
You're welcome.
our next question is kind of off the topic we were mentioning earlier about like controversy within the different news stations. They said, many say that modern media, CNN, Fox, etc., is highly diverse and fuels the fire of highly political and controversial topics for the purpose of gaining views and making money. How do you view the industry in this respect? And do you see a solution to the problem of sparking unnecessary controversy?
Well, can I take this question?
Take it.
You're like, please. Listen, the media industry is a business, okay? Let's not forget that it is a very lucrative business. I think people, readers and viewers are forgetting that this is a business, and the people are making a lot of money from this business. So first, I think it also goes back to how people are consuming news and information. I think we need to learn how to digest or read news. I think, I don't know when, but like our grandparents were so good at it. I don't know what happened. Something happened with like this recent generation, like everybody fell off the wagon or something. I don't know what happened, okay? But like, let's not forget, they are making a lot of money, right? And so they have to cater to their advertisers. Think about it. How do you make money? How do you pay a staff? And how do you make what like it's a tough place to be, right? So I think that the viewers and the readers have to also take some ownership into how they are taking on content. And I think they need to also give a little more credit to independent journalists. I didn't realize like there are so many independent journalists who are doing this on their own. They're literally traveling the world and getting war stories on their own. And we need to pay attention to their reporting and not, focus on CNN and say, why isn't CNN covering the Armenian war? It's like, hey, that guy is. He took a camera, a vest, a bulletproof vest, and he's covering it. And you can see what's happening. It doesn't have to be on CNN. Someone is doing the work. See what I'm saying? Like, it's almost they're getting mad that CNN is not bringing this guy on and putting it on there so they can just watch it on CNN. Like, if people are upset that they have to like Google and find information, they have to do a little bit of research and work to get the right information. It's all there. But people want it all on CNN. And CNN is not going to do it because it's a business. They have advertisers to cater to.
Yep. That's the bottom line. It's a business. It's a lucrative business. And as long as you're tuning in to watch two people arguing about the state of politics in the US or what police should do better, they're raking in the money. They're happy that you're tuning in. They don't care that they're sowing seeds of conflict. They don't care that they're not covering conflicts like the Armenian conflict. They don't care. They're rich. That's the sad truth of it. And so, yeah, independent journalists are a great way to stay informed and support people who are really, they're the ones that are struggling. They're not backed by anybody. They have no financial backing. They're doing it all on their own. And I really respect that. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Anna.
Yeah.
So our final question, which is a question, but not really. People in the audience want to know how to get in contact with you guys. Emails, LinkedIn, what's the best for you guys? Christian,
do you want to
go first? I want to say Instagram, but then sometimes I go through like this like dry spell where I don't check messages. So that applies back to persistence, like Christian said, right? So I'm not intentionally missing your messages. You just like the thing with Instagram and even emails, by the way. So the emails get pushed down. So if you don't send a follow-up email and get that email back up there, I miss it. I miss it because next day, and then it's like the year has gone by. So if you're persistent, if you're consistent, and if this is something that you really want, then you have to follow up. So it doesn't matter the platform. Hit a person up on, like, I remember this one girl one time messaged me on Instagram, and then she messaged me on LinkedIn. She emailed, like, all of these things. I'm like, oh, I have to respond back to her, you know? So like it worked. You know what I'm saying? So because I saw it on two different things, and then I'm like, oh my God, and then I saw it somewhere else, and so she like hit me from all the locations, and I'm like, okay. So people are not that hard to access. I even had Mark Cuban respond back to me, like, you know what I'm saying? So like people are pretty accessible nowadays. Everyone's contact is everywhere. Their social media, all of them, Facebook. There's so many platforms. It's not that hard. So yeah, I'm honestly, I'm everywhere. There's my emails everywhere, my Instagram's everywhere, LinkedIn, all of it.
You can contact me best through email or Instagram. Those are the two I check most frequently. Is there a way I can give my email? It's just my name, Christian Manoukian, all lowercase, at yahoo.com. I'm sure you can find my name on one of the event flyers, or on the YouTube link that you're watching. And my Instagram is at CV Manouk. So CV as in Victor, and then the first part of my last name. So you can send me a direct message if you had a question for me that I wasn't able to answer. Be happy to talk with you more about it. If you want to connect, go for it. This is the whole point of this panel, is connect and hear from two people that are in the media world. I love to meet you guys and connect.
Exactly. Yeah, same. However I could help. I'm, again, like I said, pretty active on Instagram. If I miss your messages, just send a follow-up. Email is info@the Armenian Report. If you'd like a job with Armenian Report, welcome. If you want to write about what's happening in Armenia, I welcome that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our event. Just want to say that all contact info for Anna and Christian will be linked in the YouTube chat right now. And it will also be in the description of the video once it's uploaded and we're finished. That's another thing. If anyone missed it or wants to rewatch a certain part, this video will be uploaded on the Business Club's YouTube page. I just want to thank Anna and Christian for coming on and being our amazing panelists. You guys had so much amazing insight that I'm sure everyone enjoyed. I know I enjoyed it. But yes, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at our next event.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Lily.
you guys. Thanks for setting this up.